Hi, today I want to share with you an improvisation that I've been experimenting with using this little analog computer. It's called the Analog Thing, and I've gone into it in a previous video in more depth, but basically it is a device that scientists and engineers can use to solve differential equations and visualize it on an oscilloscope. And the way you solve differential equations with this is that you use these little knobs here to change the voltages, and the voltages are represent the numbers that you're changing in the equation. So you can do it with ones and zeros, you can do it with a pen and paper, but apparently scientists believe that it's helpful to see it on a screen, like changing, because it's a way of analyzing dynamic systems, like a bouncing ball. Like how does the ball bounce when you change certain parameters? Like if you throw it in a box, how would it bounce different ways in a long box or a tall box? So in their instruction manual, they give some sample equations that I can solve, and one of them is called the bouncing ball. I patched it together with these cute little banana plugs. Look how little they are. Look, they're tiny. Itty bitty. So I patched them together on this. I have to remember where that went. I'll figure that out. And I've channeled it through this oscilloscope down here. I think you can see that. This is an analog oscilloscope, and it outputs an interesting figure on the screen, which changes when I twiddle the knobs. But it didn't look the way I thought it was going to look, according to their pictures. So I'm going to go over to the digital one and see what it looks like on that one. And whichever one is more interesting, I'll show you. Just a minute. Alrighty, here is the analog oscilloscope. And that waveform you see changing on the screen is the result of two different signals coming from that little analog computer. One signal is controlling the X on the graph, and the other's changing the Y. So as I change, basically these four little knobs represent the numbers in the equation. As I change the numbers, the graph changes. And this will tell an engineer something about the way the world is. I just see it as a pretty line on a screen, and I love this little analog oscilloscope. I wish I could use it, but it's not exactly what I wanted, so I'm going to switch over to the digital scope. Now here's the same equation, the same patch, but it's represented differently on the digital scope. One channel is represented with the green line, the other one is the yellow line. The yellow is the bouncy ball, and the green are the conditions, I guess, that change. So as I'm twiddling those little knobs, you see that these conditions are changing. And I'm going to switch over. There's another way of viewing this to see what this looks like when it's combined into one moving image. Now that is what I was looking for. That is a neat image to play music by. And here's the strange thing. I think I've talked about this before, but the sounds that come out from this are not pretty. They're not interesting. It's just a bunch of noise. So I'm constantly trying to figure out how to get a pretty image that is represented by beautiful sounds, or vice versa. Haven't figured it out yet, but they are interesting. So the rest of this video, it's gonna be some ugly noise. So if you came to see the pretty pictures, you've seen them. You don't need to stay any longer. There's going to be about 20 more minutes of weird noise following. So feel free to skip through just to hear what it would sound like. I spent like an hour playing with this, and I'm immune to how ugly it is because I'm listening for the changes that I'm seeing on the screen. So having said that, I'm going to move on and change it a little bit so that we can see all this working together. Okay, I have 3 machines going here. One's a little VAT machine. This is the modular synthesizer, and that's the computer that you saw the last oscilloscope images from. So I can't get them all in one shot. So I'm going to be doing some handheld camera work to show you what I'm doing, and then I'm just going to kind of focus on one at a time to show you. Like, here's what happens when I twist the knob and you can hear it, and here's what happens when I twist the knob and you can see it. I'll figure out a way to get it all together, but I had to separate them out into different power cords because it takes a lot of electricity to do this. So let's start. So I have a simple setup. Channel 1, the X, is coming into one oscillator, which makes this sound. Actually, it makes, here, I'll do this. It makes this sound naturally. But then when I adjust it through the signal that I'm getting, it sounds like this. And then this oscillator, the Y channel, is coming through, and it sounds like this. Is that right? No, this one. And that one usually sounds like this. But when I plug it in through the that, it sounds like this. Okay. So I'll be controlling the that through each of these channels. One's going through the green, one's going through the red. And they're fed in through this breakout thing, which is one cable goes, or 2 cables go here to get controlled by the that, and then the that is being controlled by this little digital oscilloscope, which is feeding in the signal there. So when you see, let's zoom in, and I can change the pattern on the screen from way over here across the room. Now let's see what that sounds like. Pause for a moment to explain. Each one of these knobs is connected to different coefficients. Red, green, yellow, black. Or is that blue? That's blue. So this would be coefficient 1, this would be coefficient 2, this is coefficient 3. And they're all kind of mixed in together. I'll show you the diagram for it. But basically what I'm doing is changing that formula by using knobs instead of changing numbers. And you can see the numbers here as I'm changing. Let's see what that sounds like. And see what it looks like. Oh, that's weird. That's not what I expected. Okay. So now I'm just going to sort of focus on one thing, and I can't record the visuals on my laptop at the same time as recording a clean digital signal. All this stuff has been going through my camera mic. So I'm going to record a clean digital signal. No more talking, just fiddling around with knobs, and you can enjoy the sounds while I focus on